It's a Monday morning. I'm ready to kick in really hard. And there's nothing I enjoy doing more than be sitting here talking about how do we grow and become really strong as early stage founders. And what I try and do in these sessions is I try and make them so that I bring on either a great growth hacker or a great founder who has done an amazing job growth hacking. And then we look at, first of all, insights about what's happening within an industry that you may not know very much about. But then number two, we start looking at what are the things that that founder did to be successful. And so, or what are the things that that growth hacker does so that all founders can be successful. And I'm happy because I got my background here today. I'm loving my expert dojo background. I wonder if Ben is there. He's definitely on our pictures over at the dojo anyway, but you're going to meet him in a couple of minutes. Before we do that, I want to talk about BHAGs. I started on them before, but I want to come back into it. And I also want to talk about stuff, okay, and context. So let me start with stuff. I'm going to say that most of us, as we look through our lives, we think to ourselves, oh, I was really unlucky here. I didn't know about that. I was too late to this. This other person had this here. But when we look back on that same trajectory, there were plenty of other things that we did have direct access to information that could have made us very, very, very wealthy, very successful, could have meant that the business was successful. Maybe it was hiring of a person. Maybe it was a time that there was a widget that we didn't quite notice or see. And most of the time, and actually I'll add the most craziest context in the world, which is the coins that you just saw come out this weekend. I am in some of the highest level conversations in crypto that exist anywhere on the planet. But did I know that there was going to be a token released? And did people who knew nothing manage to be able to get like 10, 20, 30, 40 times what their money was while I was sitting there in an intellectual space? And so that was potentially an opportunity. And by the way, I'm not speaking to whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just talking about opportunities. And this has to be the year that everybody focuses on the opportunities. What is the greatest enemy to the opportunities out there? It is the stuff, right? The stuff that we as founders are stuck with every single day. What are some examples of stuff? Well, emails are a great example. How many emails do you have in your inbox? How long do you spend going through your emails, making sure that you're on top of them, replying to everybody, making sure that the detail is taken care of, which is a wonderful thing, but at what cost? And how much time are you spending strategically working out how you achieve your BHAG? Now, a BHAG is a big, hairy, audacious goal. That's it. It's the big one. It's the one you're going for this year. It's the one that's going to be able to help you break through, the one that's going to make sure that you don't miss any opportunities and that you bring them all through. But it requires your focus. And I think if 2021 was the year where you didn't have to be that good. You just had to have a pulse and be a little bit lucky. And then you were going to raise loads of money. And then you could probably exit before anybody noticed that your product was terrible. Well, 2022, 2023, and 2024 were the years that payback came real hard. And for the entire industry of Web 2 or really entrepreneurs just looking to build out great businesses, it's been a really brutal time. And what does that mean? It means that there's been fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer funders as we've gone through those 3 years. Ignore any statistics that you see on PitchBook or Crunchbase or anywhere else, because they will incorporate things like investments in OpenAI and other huge funds that have no relevance to you whatsoever. The only thing that you care about is what kind of money is going in from how many investors into early stage startup. And it has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as we've gone through these couple of years. Now, I believe 2025 is going to be the most difficult and the most brilliant of all of them. I think we're going to see more failures this year, which were companies that kind of failed last year and kind of failed the year before, but they can't make it any further. It's just all being too much for them. I think we're going to see more funds pull back and do different things. Not necessarily Uber drivers, but somewhere in between an Uber driver and being a fund manager. And we're going to see a lot of that happening because there have been too few liquidity events happening. But when there is crisis, when there is difficulties, when things are really bad, that is the time when you, as an early stage founder, have got to seize the opportunity. Got to do it. And that's why I'm pushing so hard on this year and making sure that you do this. I do want to give my usual mention to all of the poor folks who've gone through the tragedy of the fires in LA. That is a really, really, really difficult time. And again, it was funny. It just took my mind straight to the lack of innovation and the opportunities for innovation for founders to be able to come up with something that can solve that. But in general, okay, if you're listening to this today, you are listening because you have a very, very, very strong focus on doing something that's going to push your startup journey this week. And you're going to pick up something from this call, this live stream, that's going to help you do that. In addition to that, based on what you've just heard on this conversation, you know that you got to do something big in 2025. It's it. It's going to go like this, right? Folks going to go down. Folks are going to go up. It's going to be like this, more so than any other year. And I want you to be on this trajectory. And the only way you're going to be on that trajectory is if you work this out like a math experiment. On a qualitative level, maybe the underbelly of the math experiment is you're listening to great founders like Ben, who's going to be coming on now, and talking about how they've broken through and what that looked like. On the quantitative side, you know what you need to get you know your revenue that you need to get to achieve a Series A. You know that, or a late seed, right? You know that. It might be 200,000, it might be 300,000, it might be $400,000 a month, but you know your revenue. You know the amount of money that you need to have from each customer to achieve that revenue. So you know the amount of customers. That means that you know the amount of meetings. That means that you know the amount of prospects and you know the amount of outreach activities, kind of. But that's what it's all going to be about. Okay, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to bring Ben in and we're going to talk growth. How's it going, buddy?
Good. How are you? Hope you're staying safe over there.
I am. Yeah, it's been a brutal time. I say we got lucky, but everybody gets touched by it. I actually had a founder this morning who I was chasing up. We're about to do an investment into him, and he's like, "Yeah, we lost our house, we lost our possessions, we lost everything." But he's like, "You know what? And this is in his case. This is actually one of the things I actually really like about America and the mentality that some people can have, although it's easier for a younger person to have than somebody who's older." But he said, "I just been freed. I've been freed of all of it. I am focusing on my startup. I'm focusing on my business. I'm doing nothing else but making sure that I turn this thing into a monster." And all of the pain and suffering and difficult things he's going through over here have been pushed into something so positive and so focused on the business that it would be really interesting to see in like 5 years' time how it weighs up with one against the other. Yeah. But it's cool. And I part of me thinks you got no choice. You kind of got to think like that to get you over the other side. But you are on the other side of the world. Where are you these days? You over in Singapore?
Okay. I'm still in Singapore, yeah. Although I've been doing a lot more travel in the last 12 months, but Singapore is home for now.
It's a beautiful part of the world. And so here's what we generally go through here. Number one, there's two types of folks who are listening. You've got investors, of which I know you don't have such a need these days, but you got investors who are listening through because they know that we're only going to bring on startups that are doing cool things and doing really well at it. And you have got other startups. And then the other startups, what they're looking for is, what did you do that worked really well on a growth side of it? And I know we're going to have a great conversation about partners, which you've done an epic job on. And I believe more and more that those founders who nail the partner piece are the ones that break through midterm. The beginning, it's hard and it takes time and it takes ages and we're going to go into it, but it's a difficult journey. But in the long term, you're kind of okay anyway, no matter what channels you came in at, you're just going to supplement it. But that middle term, when your early adopters start to dip and you're starting to move into folks that will want you as a sustainable long-term product, those partners are just ideal for it. But before we go into any of that, would you mind just giving just a minute or so, just explain a little bit about yourself, explain a little bit about Staple, maybe just talk about your journey and what took you to where you are right now. and then we can kick in.
Sure. So I'm Ben. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Staple, based in Singapore, but we service a global audience today. I'm an accountant and a lawyer by background, and probably one of the least technical people in the company today. So I focus more on the commercial and growth aspects of the business. Quite a lot of smart people on the engineering side. We have PhDs, we have engineers and devs that take care of the tech side of things. But Staple is an AI solution that processes data regardless of the language, layout, type, or file type of that data. So we take in all sorts of data from various sources, all shapes and sizes, standardize it, and hand it off to various systems so things can be automated, so that AI can do its thing. The thing about AI is, you need to have clean, structured, standardized data in order to really get the effectiveness. So that's a big part of what we do. We don't just handle unstructured data, we also handle structured data workflows as well. We like to think of ourselves as a universal data processing solution for all the different rails that data is passed between businesses. So, you think of a global enterprise, which is our target customer. They are exchanging information between all sorts of businesses in all different types of data types, document types, layouts, languages. Some poor individual or some poor team is tasked with the responsibility of receiving, collecting, collating, reading, understanding, reconciling, correcting, and then entering that data into various systems. We are basically doing that part of the process, the heavy lifting, looking for anomalies in that data before putting it into various systems of record. We do this today in 252 languages. We do it in 58 countries as at today.
Yeah. There's like a ton of places I could start here, but I think that many times I get into this whole, growth hacking and like how to grow and how to get stronger and build your company. And I go directly to go to market and the outreach. And do you do LinkedIn versus do you do email versus do you do like partnerships? And how does that work when you do the presentations? And I skip really quickly over the lovable product, or what would be called in San Francisco minimum viable product. But I think of like very, very, very specifically as lovable product. In your case, I think the lovable product is almost everything, because the better the product is, the more people will get great data insights from it. They'll be able to do things they couldn't have done before. And then other people find out and they hear about it. How did you go about on the product journey? I just want to stay on that at the beginning, because two things were happening at the same time, right? Number one, AI is like the fastest moving beast. It's like a cheetah out there. It's going so fast and so quick that you build something this week and like literally next week, there's 500 new widgets that it's not that they'll innovate over you. It's just that they kind of make it more complicated because they're there. And then the second problem is that you're trying to convince the most difficult segment of the market to convince. So how did you approach, which is the enterprise section? So how did you approach the product development and then be able to evolve and build alongside it in a space where it's very expensive to do this, but you managed to do it with a very small budget?
There's a lot to unpack there. So we started our journey in 2019. And at that time, AI was not a particularly sexy topic. It was more about crypto and blockchain. And, the AI boom really took off, I guess, 2022, 2023. So we may have been a little bit early. That's the first point. We had our own AI capabilities, our own AI models. We still do that are still quite reliable and accurate, and they have multilingual capabilities. We built that from scratch from day one. We in hindsight, we made the mistake of going after small businesses and startups as our preferred market. Um, that was challenging, especially in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is not like the US. It is very fragmented. There are very different ways of doing business. You have different regulations, different laws, different languages. So it's a significant challenge to get product market fit in a place like Southeast Asia. And if you focus just on one country, it's probably not quite big enough individually as a market. So Singapore alone is certainly not big enough. It's 6 million people, a few 100,000 companies, I guess. So from the get-go, we were forced to build a product for a multinational audience. And that was tough, but I think that helped us to compete with larger incumbents much more effectively. Now, the timing kind of forced us in a particular direction as well. So, like I said, we started out 2019, 2020, COVID hit.
And sorry, Ben, just going back to your ideal customer profile for a second. So you started with a small. How did you realize, and when did you realize that, like, these small companies? Because every person listening to this call goes through this toggle between, I know a small enterprise is going to listen to me, and a big enterprise is not going to listen to me. I know a small enterprise is going to do a deal quickly, and a big enterprise is going to take 12 to 24 months. But I also know small companies are poor, and for them to adopt innovation, only the very best of them are going to be able to adopt at a very quick rate. So what was that process like on the ideal customer profile?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. SMEs are so easy to talk to. It's very easy to win a contract, win a deal, get them paying, onboarding them. It all happens so quickly, and you can speak to many at once, and it is quite a straightforward process. But we realized we needed to close many customers in order to be able to grow the business. 1,000 SME customers versus one enterprise customer. And at a certain point, we started to realize that there were ongoing requests for features from these SME customers, but not necessarily a correlating desire to pay more money. Very price sensitive customers. And that works for certain products, but for us, it wasn't the case. And we have a very volume driven model. So the more customers use, the more we charge. It's a fairly transparent model, but there's a certain plateau for SMB customers. They only process so much data. It's still a lot, but it's nowhere near the volume that an enterprise would process. We got lucky in the sense that I'm going to admit this was luck in some respects. We were lucky enough to get a contract with one of the big four accounting firms, and
but luck doesn't come for free. Like, I'm a big fan of the whole Gary Player saying of probably half people are like, who the hell's Gary Player? Yeah, if you're an old person, you know who Gary Player is, right? Like, the more I practice, the luckier I get. Right. And so you only get in with the big five if you have people in the organization that had a relationship with the big five, i.e. you or somebody else, and if you develop that relationship to a place where they see what you have as a value, like, it in itself is a skill set. And you're now moving into the area that I know that you're killer at, which is on the partners, right? And I'm sure as we talk about this, like, we also will see that it's not a straight line even into these large five people, like a large consulting company or any partner. Like, there's plenty of missteps to get them to approve you and have them properly pushing you out to their customers rather than using you for your own needs. So that was a big call, right? Once you got the validation of having a large consulting firm saying, we like these guys, you should use it, that it's part of it, I imagine, is the placebo effect and part of just you as a team saying, wow, we're now going to sell the hell out of this. And part of it is also you're just getting more prospects, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, it changed the makeup of our company. You know, the morale lift, investor interest spiked. You know, the ability to then go out to other enterprises was much easier. The hardest one is always the first, I think, and the volume of data mattered at that point for an AI company. You know, we were able to access a lot more training data, improve our product, which was miles ahead of our incumbent competitors in the region at the time, um, in many languages, and that's, you know, that's where the flywheel really started to take off, and we were able to kind of hone our skills in reaching other enterprises, and then, you know, that firm we also worked with as a customer, but also as a partner to reach their client base as well, who had similar challenges.
Yeah, and I want to talk about like how you manage that relationship with that top five, but also with other partners as they come on as well. But I just
Mm.
think, but before I do that, let me just underline for everybody listening: this is your first lesson. The moment you start bringing in, I don't know why it brings me back to Scarface to say hello to my little friend, but like it's say hello to my big friend, okay? Say hello to my big friend. Suddenly you're surrounded. You know, there's a bar fight about to happen, and you suddenly got five massive 6'7" people around you. You feel better in the bar fight than you felt a couple of moments ago when you were just all on your lonesome. So it's really important to be able to bring in those large partners alongside you. You don't have to go for the biggest at the beginning. You guys did amazing to get like a top five consulting firm, but you can have smaller consulting firms, other people, and to bring in as well. But just startups, remember the people that you are surrounded by are the sum total of the value that is perceived to be given to the companies that you serve. Like that's just the
Mm.
reality. So don't try and do this on your own.
Agreed, and I think it's especially important for AI startups too. This, you know, your partnership network, your ecosystem, is a form of competitive moat. I think, you know, that you mentioned earlier. There's just AI is moving so quickly. There's startups that are launching every day in the same space. There's a lot of competition in certain niches, but if you have a strong partnership network, a strong ecosystem, that can be a wedge that can get you into these big accounts that are off limits to all these other new companies. So I seriously think it's a form of distribution moat that startups really should be taking seriously as a way to differentiate.
Yeah, and it's actually I never thought of it like that, but it's so true because the folks that are your partners, they're not like spending all day saying, "Oh, I wonder if we can find somebody for like 50 cents cheaper." Or I wonder if we can sign somebody with an extra page. They just don't want you to mess it up. That's all. Like they're
Yeah,
happy. They got you. You do a great job for their people. Like there has to be a monster difference in something for you to lose it, or you got to do a terrible job. So I think it's a wonderful idea to have like this group of partners around you. Now I remember about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, when that was going so well, we had this conversation around, does that mean we should go after like consulting firms all the way through Southeast Asia and other areas as well? And rather than having like one or two or three, we'll have loads of partners. Like that's our way to get into the customers. How did that go? And what did you learn?
yeah. Good memory. Um,
Mate, I don't even remember my wedding anniversary, but I remember this stuff. It's messed
yeah,
up. It's messed
yeah,
up, but I
yeah.
but I was so happy when you did it because I was like, yeah, like
Gosh, yeah,
I'm you're following the yellow brick road, but the yellow brick road in startup never ends up at the Wizard of Oz. Like
yeah.
it ends up at the corner shop.
So, I mean, I had exactly the same mindset. The way you just articulated that was how I was thinking when we first kind of thought about this partnership strategy. And I was all starry-eyed, going after all these potential consultants and system integrators, and resellers all across Asia, and seeing dollar signs. If only it were that easy. The quality matters as well. So I mean, there are, we worked with other consultants or partners that just didn't have the technical capability to implement an AI product at the same standard that we would expect, or the same standard that we would implement it. Or they just didn't have the enterprise customer book or the customer leads that were an ideal fit for us. And despite incentivizing them and having very various revenue share models in place, it's just it can be a waste of time if you're not judiciously selecting these partners. They have to be quality, and they have to be aligned in terms of the ICP, I think, as well. And the technical capability is another point. You need to make sure that they do have the technical chops to service these very demanding enterprise customers for an AI product.
Yeah, two things you did amazingly well. Like, because a lot of the time, this really is startup. This is the difference. For anybody watching who's not a startup, and you're thinking, oh, what's this journey like? This journey is like running into a lot of dead end streets with big high walls, right? And at the beginning of the street looks like you're trying to get to a football stadium, right? And it looks like the street is the perfect street to get into the main gate of the football stadium, and you run down that street and there's a big wall and you got to run all the way back again and look for the next street. That's startup, right? But most founders actually don't spend the time to run down the street in the first place, and you don't have a choice. You got to check. You got to all of these channels that you can go after. You get clues as to whether a channel could be really good. If you're an amazing executor, you follow that clue. Sometimes if you're really lucky and you do great execution, the clue leads to a perfect channel, which gives what's called a growth loop, which means that you just can throw more and more money at it and it will give you the same returns, if not better and better and better. And if you're unlucky, it won't give you a growth loop, but you might get one or two sales out of it. And then you run down another street and another street and another street and another street. Now, I know you oversubscribed your pre-seed, you oversubscribed your seed, you were nailing it. Series A, I'm guessing, is coming up for this year. Talk to me about, like, first of all, before we go into like how you approach the rounds and with the investors, because it may have been frantic underneath, like with an old duck kicking the feet underneath the water, or a swan, but you did look like that beautiful swan while you were doing it. But before we go into the fundraise, tell me a little bit about some of the other channels you went after, because your growth, the revenue has been growing beautifully. Again, nothing's easy, but you made it happen. So just talk to me about, you got the first top 5 in. What other things did you do to grow the company? And talk to us a little bit about the growth in whatever you can talk about, and then what you're planning to get for next year or this year.
Yeah. So I talked about some false starts we had with the partners that didn't work out. We thought more strategically about this in 2023, 2024. And that's when we started to see dividends in terms of revenue growth. You've seen the results, the lagging indicators that came from that partnership strategy. It worked quite well. But we were more strategic about selecting partners that were complementary in our product, complementary in our ICP, and this was down to the point where we started to identify very specific use cases for our technology. We process data, but that's quite a broad statement. So we focused, hey, what's the biggest pain point? Cross-border supply chain, multilingual cross-border supply chain use cases. Turns out that big companies, big software ERP companies have this challenge, and we fit nicely into various ERP suites to help them address this shortcoming in the data processing challenge that they have. So that was one area. So we work with the big ERP companies like SAP, other regional ERP players, as well as the system integrators that deploy and integrate those ERP tools.
And
So
so
that
these
was
are
that was
still partners, right? But they're just very targeted partners. Now you're like, okay,
right.
there's 50,000 people out there, but there's actually 500 that are really important to us, and we're going to focus on these guys.
Exactly. And then, another use case was, forms and documentation for KYC and credit. There are some companies that offer this service to banks and financial institutions, but it turns out they don't do all the plumbing and behind the scenes. So we work
Mm,
with a lot of those companies. They provide the front end, and we provide the back end infrastructure to help process all of that. So that's another area where we targeted. Um, but this targeted approach, I mean, it led to new markets for us. I mean, as you know, we broke into the US as a result of this approach. We broke into China as a result of this approach. Um, we couldn't have done that on our own. So it's been extremely helpful in terms of the way we expand our market and obviously our revenue. So I mean, we've been growing our recurring revenue base, more than 200% each year for the last 3 years now. I think it's looking to be more than that this year. We are we are getting investor interest at the moment, so we may be raising sooner than we expected. There are a lot of opportunities um, that are partner driven at the moment, actually. So um, uh, a kind of side effect of this partnership that approach is that we are starting to get more pipeline than we can handle right now, and we have to raise more funds to hire the people to be able to service this pipeline
yeah.
and convert this pipe into deals. So that is the situation we're in. Like it's purely a situation of more demand than we can supply right now.
Incredible. And that's all because of like the hard work. Because I remember back in the early time, when did we invest? Like it was almost 19 or 20. It was like right at the start, right?
Uh,
And
yeah, it's 20 or 21, I think. Yeah.
yeah, and I remember the early days, and it's like, and it feels like everything is a scramble, and it's like trying this and trying that. But actually, when you look back, it actually does work super linear. It's like, there's these four areas, these four dead end streets to go down. Well, we got to go down these streets so we can, and even they build relationships that end up referring over to other relationships. Well, what I really, really, really like that what you've said is number one is like this insatiable focus on partners and having the right partners and making your partners look really good. But I really like how you've looped it back into lovable product and said, look, at the end of the day, nobody cares about features. Nobody cares if you have better AI or worse AI. They just care about the KYC being done better, right? And if you get like the three or four things that are the greatest pain points, and you reinforce like what huge pain points they are to people, and you reinforce the solution you have, and then you take your partner and say to your partner, look, I'm going to make you look amazing. Like that's my job. And then the only thing you have to do is comply with what you promised. You're going to build a company that's going to get acquired, like just period.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's for us. I think no, I definitely agree on the point of having a lovable product, but these customers just want their problem solved. Like they just want their problem solved, and it's something that I think we've done quite well at.
I love that. I almost feel like doing a big sign in Silicon Valley saying, shut up. The customers just want their problem solved.
That's it. Just take it off their plate. Just deal with it. Yeah.
They're not interested in anything else. I think the only exception to that is maybe a Trump meme coin that gets launched on a Saturday evening, and just a lot of people just want to make a ton of cash.
Yeah. True.
which
One
is a
exception.
which is a problem in itself. Okay, cool. Can we talk a little bit about, we have a problem from Prakash. I didn't see that. Okay, sweet. Kinley has brought in a couple of questions that have come up. Question from Prakash: what are some of the ethical dilemmas or considerations you faced as an AI driven startup, and how did you navigate them?
Interesting. Um, I mean, I think where the particular field that we're in is interesting because you see a lot of generative AI, large language models. We use aspects of this technology in part of our product where it makes sense. Um, but LLMs and Gen AI, they have a tendency to be quite creative, right? Like, they can be creative with their answers, and that's perfectly fine. That's people get a lot of value from that. But in our domain, creativity is pretty frowned upon. We just need to be accurate. We need to get the details, and we need to be able to make sure that the information that we're exchanging is very accurate, and doesn't get too carried away with creativity. So for that reason, we haven't had to deal with these kind of traditional challenges around bias in training data and that kind of thing. We've had a fairly diverse training data set to start with, but I guess one of the interesting challenges that's come up with some of these enterprises, not necessarily ethical but more legal. The legal frameworks that these enterprises are dealing with are not quite equipped to handle the advances in AI that we're seeing at the moment. So, for instance, you have these AI agents or agentic AI with inbuilt agency, inbuilt autonomy. If something goes wrong, who's to blame? Who's culpable? Traditionally, the vendor onboarding process or the procurement process at a big bank or a big enterprise would be able to shift that blame onto the vendor. They did something wrong. Either they have some kind of financial culpability or they're responsible to make good, right? But if the AI gets this wrong, and you've given that AI a lot of autonomy and a lot of agency to do whatever you need it to do, then whose fault is it? And the law is not quite there yet. The common law and the laws in different jurisdictions is not really there to guide enterprises in this decision making. For that reason, a lot of enterprises are kind of holding off on purchasing or going ahead with these agentic AI strategies or rollouts. And I think that's probably a good thing. I mean, I think about the alternative, and there may be some pretty catastrophic issues if you give AI a very high level of autonomy and agency to make these decisions.
And Rohit has come in another question here. I'll throw in an aligned but maybe slightly fluffier opinion on this. Humans have been shit for years. you know, like the bigger an organization, the more people have been there for a long time, the more it's like a boys or a girls club, probably more a boys club, for all of its failings. And the more people make decisions after they've been at a retreat in Maui and had a bunch of beers the evening before, and then the next day is their board meeting. It's just like, we're not coming from a place of perfection here. It's all messed up already. And there's plenty of biases. We want to talk about biases. I will swap out the biases that we have in the system today for anything that John Connor and Skynet are going to bring us. Okay. and so I'll add one final thing in here as well. As an early stage venture capitalist, I am ethically, I suppose, or my job is to return money to LPs. Like, that's our job. But my heart is with the fact that like tens of thousands of startups fail all of the time. Like, we should do fine with money, but startups don't. And so all that matters is growth while building something that you believe to be fair and true. And if you see stuff that's not working or not accurate, that's lovable product. If you see things that are not helping humanity, I don't think that's a problem that many AI companies are facing today, but like, that's not your problem. Like, what's happening is happening. Generative AI is here. It is just beginning. I'm in Santa Monica. I see Waymo cars with Jaguar, frames driving around the streets all the time. There's like 50 or 100 of them on the streets of Santa Monica at any one time on any day. It's here. And so because of that, we need to make sure that the big problem, that the big enemy that we're facing, which is to have one or two huge organizations in the world that are controlling anything, like that's the enemy, in the same way that it's the enemy today when we have like AWS or Google or those guys controlling all cloud in the sky and using their own LLMs so they can steal information and use it for themselves. Like that's a conversation. We don't need to worry about this in short term. We need to make sure we don't fall so far behind that we get rollered on. On that topic, Ben, real quick, and we'll just jump through a couple of messages, and then I want to talk to where you go to in the future in the last 5 or 10 minutes. Biases, based on what I've said, based on what you think, based on what you know, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate to have very diverse training data to start with, and the diversity in our team that gives the human feedback and the data review, I think, minimizes the risk of biases. But I mean, if a lot of what we do, that the only time that the AI really engages a human for review is where it's not sure of a of an output or an answer or a response, and in that case, it turns to a human operator in order to get feedback on what the answer should be. So I think in that case, we minimize that kind of negative output and biased output in our products. We don't see a lot of you know inappropriate or I guess offensive output in what we're doing. There's no real profiling of any kind. It's literally kind of data as it appears or as it should be. There's not really any latitude for I guess opinion or labeling of a certain data set.
Okay, cool. And I think also the question was probably referring to just accuracy and biases and how it affects accuracy as well in the data that you process.
Right.
So I really like this as well from Shrina, where it's like, how do you gather and leverage customer insights to drive product growth in related product? You rely on community related approach. And I love this because this is right in the place of lovable product. And you have built an incredible product to take yourself from where you started, which was nothing, to a Series A, which is probably imminent within the next 3-6 months, right? My bigger question, which is aligned with this, is how do you develop the product out? Like, where does the product go to from Horizon 1, which is where you are right now, and you've built an amazing product that solves problems, through Horizon 2, where you systemize it and create something where you can scale much higher, to Horizon 3, where it bears no reflection to what you imagined it would be at the beginning? And how do you do that in the context of what Shrina just said?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think this is smack bang on the topic of product market fit and the fact that that's a never ending journey. You might get to product market fit and this is good evidence to raise a big funding round or whatever, but that's not the end. You still need to kind of continue to refine the product, triangulate the market that product is going into, and constantly get feedback from customers and users. So that's how we do it. We just do it the old fashioned way of constantly speaking to users, gathering feedback, getting feedback from customers through our customer success function, and making sure that product market fit is always maintained and honed. This is part and parcel of the role of the CSMs, but also the product management team. They need to make sure that product is being developed to satisfy the needs of that audience. So it is a constant feedback loop that we make sure we engineer into the product management, the product development process. Yeah.
And so this year, the biggest year you've ever had? I don't mean revenue. I mean the biggest year you've ever
2025.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hope so. I
mean, of all of the years that come after 2025 and all of the years that came before 2025, is this going to be the most important one? And if not, when do you think would be the most important one? Because we're on trajectories. Because this is a unicorn. You're a venture backable company. This is your world. You know that the end game is you get something that's going to be acquired, or you're going to go all the way to unicorn. You go all the way to unicorn. You keep it private, and you have really
Mm.
nice dinners rather than less nice dinners. And then, are you go public? Are you go public, or you keep it private? So as you're going through that trajectory, like I feel an expert dojo, generally, like this year, it's not that next year, the year after, the year after, the year we won't make more money or anything else. I just feel there's some years in a startup which is that pivotal year, that it's almost like girl to woman, boy to man. Like it's the year that you move from probability to certainty, or so on and so on. I just would love to get in your head about where you see this year being on
Yeah,
that trajectory.
I mean, I think so. I mean, if we execute our plans as we intend to, I think so. There's a lot of fast moving developments in the world right now. I think it's probably one of the better times to be building and scaling a startup in these kind of periods of uncertainty. As people are kind of chasing all these other opportunities left, right, and center, we're staying true to what we do, and there is a growing market for our product. With the funding round we did last year and the funding round we plan to do this year, I think we'll significantly grow our team to be able to capitalize on all these opportunities that are coming our way. So I think we'll see an inflection point in our growth. Um, I said we doubled the last couple of years. I think we might do that and then some, probably three or four times in terms of revenue growth. We are now in the US market. We're now in the China market. So yeah, I mean, there is just so much dry powder for us right now to deploy our product and really scale up our revenue this year.
I love it.
I think
And I love
a
that.
lot
I
of
love that you use as well. Sorry, Ben, go on,
yeah
finish.
yeah. I mean, I think this is the point where we've kind of been looking for that initial product market fit where we've passed that stage now, and now it's the time to scale. And we have the infrastructure in place, we have this ecosystem in place, we have all the mechanisms we need to reach these markets set, the right partners, and I think it's just a matter of putting fuel on the fire.
Incredible. And I love that term. That's what I was getting to. There is an inflection point in a company where you just know, like, things can still happen, but it's kind of your fault in your own mind if things do happen. Prior to that, there was a lot of that Gary Player luck that was required to supplement like really good work being done. And when that inflection point is hit, the fuse is lit, escape velocity is possible. It is merely a question of numbers. That is all. So for everybody watching, you are watching a unicorn. You got a question at the end there? Oh, come on. You got to give a question just as we're finishing. How have partnerships and integrations helped in scaling AI's reach? They've done the whole thing. Like he has literally built his company on incredible partners that he has done nothing else other than make look really good. Is that fair, Ben? Like everything you've done, other than the stuff that's come from it, has been around like building trust and large partnerships to make sure that they're okay.
It has, and I mean, yeah, for the startups out there, this is how we've been able to lower our CAC. We have a really strong CAC to ACV ratio. So it's a really capital efficient way of acquiring customers, particularly large enterprise customers. So, I mean, I sound biased on this, but it's worked for us. And I do believe, for many reasons, it's a strategy that you should take seriously in growing in your home market, but also elsewhere.
Go hard, everyone. The fuse is lit. I believe I would put $50. This is a unicorn in the making. The only reason they won't have a unicorn is if they decide to take an offer beforehand. It's a great company. It's an incredible team. They've built an amazing sales growth platform that has built them a moat around it because their partners love working with them. they raise money in a way that's relatively, I won't say easy, but it's straightforward because people can see the trajectory going forward. It's all math, ladies and gents. Ben, thank you so much, buddy. I want to be
Thank
around
you,
you when
Ron.
you're raising that Series A so we can make sure that we spread the word with our investors and just keep on building the amazing company you're building and take it to the place that it was always going.
Thank you. Thanks. And stay safe. I'll speak to you soon.
All right. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.